It's called the Tech Disc. Opened up a whole new world of possibilities for disc golfers to know your throw and know your numbers.
And a big help in that has been the Tech Disc.
If you guys don't know what TechDisc is, first, where have you been? Apparently everybody's been using it.
I'm sure you guys have seen this product, TechDisc, all around the disc golf world, and I was able to get the opportunity to speak with the actual co-founder about how this product came to be, and it is so intriguing the steps that led to this particular product and why it is by far the most technical and most advanced thing we have in the disc golf world. So while it is a bit of a longer video, I think you will definitely love the insight that Michael Sizemore brings, so be sure to watch the entire thing and listen to what he says about how this product can improve nose down angle, speed, and overall form control in a way that no one else has even touched in the market. So with that, let's get into this interview. And just one more thing, we didn't quite touch on it during the interview, but there are a lot of very interesting features coming out in the next coming months that make this product even better than what it is currently. So I can't say what it is, but I am very excited to test it out. What's up? Today I have Michael Sizemore, the co-founder of TechDisc. Today's deep dive, let's go into how he created one of the most influential brands in the disc golf sport and why it has taken over the disc golf world like crazy. So starting way back in 2012, graduated from Notre Dame with your MBA and electrical engineering degree. What led you from that to Bushnell and then to creating TechDisc?
Yeah, so we're going way back. So I started playing disc golf in about 2006. I started a disc golf club in Notre Dame, and we got to go to nationals and had a great time there. So when I graduated, I was hoping eventually to do something in disc golf. My prospects back in 2012 to do something in electrical engineering and in disc golf were pretty slim, as you can imagine. So I bounced around through a couple jobs, ended up back in Kansas City, where we're both from. And I was working locally here at a consulting company, and Bushnell reached out and said they were trying to get into more electronic products, which seemed like a great fit for me. I had a small inkling that, rangefinders and disc golf might be a good opportunity, but that was not part of the job description at all. So when I started at Bushnell as an electrical engineer, the rangefinders were the most electrical product that they had. And so I dove deep on understanding how those worked and what you could do with them and everything. And so that's how I kind of ended up at Bushnell. Was I wanted to work on electrical products. Bushnell was trying to do more electronic products, more sophisticated electronics products, and they were headquartered in Kansas City. So it was a great fit.
How did you manage to pivot from a presumably pretty high profit career into a much more risky endeavor in disc golf?
It's a good question. A lot kind of happened that helped make that transition possible. Starting the disc golf effort within Bushnell really proved to, I think, a lot of people, but also me personally, that their disc golf is large enough now that you can really make a career out of it in a lot of different ways. I remember starting the disc golf club at Notre Dame back in 2010-ish. When we said disc golf, everyone said, "Disco what?" And I was fully ready for that again when we was trying to sell the idea of rangefinders and disc golf at Bushnell, and it just didn't happen, which was crazy because it was only 7 years removed. But in that time frame, everybody that I talked to had a husband that played disc golf, or there was a disc golf course in the park near their house, or they had some connection and some familiarity with it. So that was a big eye opener for me, was that it's not mainstream, but it's mainstream enough that there are going to be some other opportunities here.
And so you mentioned the rangefinders. Were you part of the push for Bushnell to make quote unquote like disc golf rangefinders, or was that completely separate? Like that was marketing and not really you related?
No, I was definitely the first push.
You were the first push,
but my push alone was not enough to get that ball rolling. So yeah, funny enough, I started in January, I believe it was 2019. So I think Worlds in 2019 was Peoria, if I remember correctly. And there was a moment where there were a few people using rangefinders in disc golf back then. I think Paige Pierce, Sarah Hokum, Kevin Jones had just started using a rangefinder, and he ranged a shot at Eureka and then threw in from like 430 feet away. And crazy. I thought, this is it, guys. This is the moment where like we can justify rangefinders in disc golf. It's a great hype moment. Let's jump on it. And so I wrote up some emails and made some slides and fired off some emails to people, and did not happen. Nothing.
Oh, that
My
lead
calls went unanswered. But I kept looking for opportunities like that and just poking people along the way. And eventually, our marketing manager, Carlos, looked at it kind of with a fresh set of eyes and realized, these YouTube views are meaningful. This market is looking meaningful, and it's not traditionally what we do, but otherwise it has all the hallmarks of a market that should work well for us. So he was really the first person to kind of said, hey, this actually looks like it could work. And then we started working together to, take little steps and take little experiments to keep pushing farther.
And how did you go from that point to where you made your first prototype? Well, I guess I'm not sure exactly you or the other co-founder created the first true prototype of TechDisc, but how did that first prototype come to be?
Yeah, so my co-founder, John Carino, out in San Francisco, was a great software engineer. He was taking some time off from a job, I think during COVID, and started getting into disc golf. And like everybody, he wanted to know how to get better as fast as possible. He has a great software background, and he started to learn electronics a little bit to put sensors on a disc, just to see what he could learn about it. And I think there's probably a number of people who have put sensors on a disc and then found out that the sensors clip immediately and the disc golf throw is just too violent for that. But he took it a step further and said, okay, let me get some better sensors, and learned how to lay out a circuit board to keep pushing it forward until he got sensors that would actually work with this. And so he had put together a prototype as kind of a side project of TechDisc. And I can show you back in the office. We've got some older prototypes of his. But yeah, he put it together as a side project just to see what he can learn about his own throw and try to get better. And that kind of snowballed into more of a project and less of Carino getting better at disc golf, as these things do. But anyway, so fast forward a few years, I was looking around for someone who's doing something related to a launch monitor in disc golf. And John had demoed his prototype at OTB back in 2022, I think.
Oh, wow. That's a lot sooner than I thought.
Yeah, I think it was 2022. And so we ended up getting connected, and I reached out. She said, hey, your project looks really cool. Love to know if I could help in any way. And so we started talking, and I'm not a software guy. I'm a hardware guy. I do circuit board layout. He's more of a software guy. He got the circuit board layout, pretty functional. But our skill sets were pretty complementary, and we started working together and put together the brand and really turned kind of the prototype into something that's more of a product. And then we launched at OTB in 2023.
That was a very fast turnaround time from the first true prototype to launching.
We were pretty excited.
Yeah,
there were a few hours that went into it. Yeah.
I could only imagine.
Yeah.
And so looking at Worlds of last year, the demo looked like so good, or it wasn't really a demo because it's actually a product. But yeah, using that as my reference point, I just assumed you guys had been around for a while and you just didn't explode until Worlds, but I guess not.
No, we had really been just launched 3 or 4 months earlier.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was pretty quick.
And how do you go about sourcing like all these circuit boards and designing the process that goes into, okay, I need to center this particular way. I need to graph out like this much of the disc, because you guys don't know this, but their setup is so professional that like it's like a true lab. So how do you develop that
Lots
process?
of microscopes.
Lots of microscopes.
Yeah, physical products are fun, and putting electronics on a disc is a challenging endeavor. There's a lot of things that you think would be easy that turn out to be pretty tricky and pretty finicky. So in terms of the circuit board, we've got a company in town over in Lenexa that is soldering all of our circuit boards. And so we'll take in the soldered circuit boards and calibrate, assemble the housing, and then assemble everything on the disc here in our South Kansas City headquarters. There's a lot of microscopes involved. I won't go into all the details because some of that stuff is
Secret sauce.
a little bit of our secret sauce. Yeah. Even if it's boring, it's still some boring secret sauce. But yeah, we've got a lot of microscopes because the way that you center it tends to matter a great deal. And so I know people would love to take the puck off and put it on their own disc. I hope we can get there someday, but for right now, that would compromise the data. And that was one of our first goals that Carino and I agreed on pretty early, was we wanted this to never compromise the data quality, because we figured if we launched and it was good 90% of the time, that would probably be a recipe for failure, because it's so new and there's so much trust to build.
Any limitations to the current process to where you can't expand further?
No, really the mold and the plastic that we use, that we put it on, the mold doesn't really affect the data, which is a little bit counterintuitive for most disc golfers to think about. But technically, if we put it on a Undertaker or a Firebird or whatever, the data coming out of that is going to be basically identical. There's a little bit of an effect of the rim width, how much weight is on the outside of the disc relative to how much is in the center. That can affect the speed and spin that you're able to generate. So the effect from going from a distance driver to going to a putter is probably noticeable. For most players, small differences in molds is not going to create a noticeable impact on the data. But yeah, we can really put it on any disc. We tried to choose molds that are pretty comfortable and generally neutral feeling for most people. We don't want to choose discs that people pick up and think, oh, this is really flippy, or oh, this is really overstable, because people actually change their throws just based on the way the disc feels. So we try to pick middle of the road discs that are pretty popular in plastics that are premium for the very good grip and durability, because we expect this product to last years and years. So yeah, we can work with anybody. We've got good relationships set up with Discraft, was the first one. They've been great, and we brought on Innova a month or two ago.
And as right now, you pretty much sell out immediately when you launch your new inventory, correct?
So far, we've been scaling up the manufacturing to meet the demand. And we're actually getting close to meeting that. So right now, if you order a TechDisc on our site, it currently says a July pre-order, but realistically, that order is going to ship out within about 2 weeks. So before too long, we'll transition to just TechDisc is in stock, order shipping within 1 to 2 weeks. So unless something changes.
So going into the economics, I think a lot of people just hearing $300 for this device, they immediately go, okay, whatever. But you have justified that it has the value. It does justify the economics for the price tag. But as somebody that doesn't know the value, what would you tell them?
Well, this is, I think, an interesting piece of my history in electronics coming into this product. And I think one of the benefits of Carino starting this with fresh eyes is coming from a background in electrical engineering and designing electrical products. There are sensors on TechDisc that I never would have touched. I never would have considered. Once you get sensors that start to cost more than $10 a piece, and you start to put multiple of those on a board, that stops looking like a consumer product. And so that was one of the benefits of Carino starting this with fresh eyes, was he didn't have those biases. If you looked at an accelerometer and it was $3 a piece or $20 a piece, you only looked at the performance. And so, there's some very expensive, I would say, very non-consumer sensors that are built into this, because the disc golf throw is really explosive.
Yeah.
And if you're going to capture it all without clipping, if you're going to capture it all and still be able to have really good data integrity, you've got to put a lot of money into the components that you're using, because that's just not normal. It's not a step counter.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Yeah, I did some research last night and just saw other people trying to DIY it, and they were like, honestly, it's probably not charging enough, because doing your own sensors, after 30 miles an hour, it's just jumbled data that you can't decipher anything from. So going truly high grade is what you have to do.
Yeah, it's the only way to produce really good data.
Did you expect all the pros to really love the product as much as they seem to have?
I mean, I think whenever I launched the Rangefinders with TechDisc, I've always expected everyone to love it from day zero and use it all the time, which it turns out so far has never happened. It takes time. So this launch monitor product is a very common thing in ball golf, but it is totally new in disc golf. And so it's definitely taken time for people to understand just number one, what does the product do? Like, here's a $300 disc that I can't throw on a course. Like, what's the point of this? So it's taken some time, but I think we're really starting to see that people are starting to understand what do the metrics mean, what do good metrics look like, because that's a pretty nuanced conversation. And also start to understand how do they use it to actually make their game better. So if you make a form change and you get more accuracy, but your spin goes down, is that okay? There's a lot of cases where that is okay. There's some cases where that isn't okay. So we finally got the tool and the data to show where, when that is and isn't okay. It's just going to take time for people to start to understand what all that means.
Mm-hmm. I just got a net, so I started getting a feel for what that's like. And this is like step 2. And then after you see the nose angle, the speed, spin rate, now you have the simulator, which can actually project where your disc is going to go. So there's all these levels to like improving what the disc is actually doing, rather than just going in a field and maybe getting like enough throws in, but you have to retrieve all the discs, and that takes time and effort. And then your next throw isn't quite the same. So having a net that can like every time show you the exact flight pattern is just so valuable.
Yeah, and I don't think we would say that this is a substitute for field work at all, but it is a great precursor to field work. So it lets you, basically get into your lab, work on a grip you found on YouTube or something that your friend told you about, see how the data actually changes, and then you can take that out in the field and see how do you execute that in the field. Because I will say, your teeing surface matters. Just what you visualize when you throw matters, and it takes a little bit of practice to throw into a net the same way that you throw into a field. So it's always good to see how it affects the data here, but also make sure you execute that the same way in the field.
Have you watched Overthrow and like how he's fully adopted the TechDisc for most of his content, it seems like now?
Yeah, that was, I think one of the most exciting parts early on was when Mikey first used the TechDisc to throw over 500 feet. I think it was the first big video that came out. That was just, it was great for us from a marketing perspective, but just as product designers, it was so satisfying to see someone take your product so early on and like get exactly what you hope they would get out of it. Like he was able to work on his metrics, in his net, and then take that out to the field and see the results that, the TechDisc basically promised he would get. That was so cool. So we've been able to see that over a lot of different customers since then, but that was a very big, very high profile early one. That was so much fun.
And seeing how it is producing so many results already, where is the future of TechDisc?
Yeah, our real goal is to help people get better faster. And I think the hardware that we've got right now does that pretty well. I think we've got a lot of room to grow on the software side. So that's where we're spending most of our time right now. I mean, the simulator that you see behind you is a lot of investment. We've got a lot of features that are starting to roll out or will be coming out later this year that are also quite a bit of an investment. And those are all really geared around making your practice more fun and more useful. So hopefully that you'll see a lot more of that from us in the future, things that make practicing more fun and more useful and help you get better faster.
And how did you decide to expand your team size?
Yeah, so we've got 5 to 6 full-time, a couple part-time, and a couple contractors. So we've got 2 guys working on this 3D simulation. It's gotten fairly big, but I think we've come to this size because number one, the sales were there to support it. So thank you to everybody who's bought a TechDisc. You're the reason that we can do some of this cool stuff. But 2, when Carino and I got together at first, there were so many things we had on the roadmap of things that would make this a great tool for helping people get better. And I don't think we're even through the first batch of features that we had on that roadmap initially. So we're still kind of executing on that first initial vision that we had.
That roadmap, what was one of the features that you were really hoping could happen, but now you got into like the final stages of your first prototype, you were like, it just doesn't really work in reality?
A really interesting one is your throw direction. Yeah, so right now, and for all time until now, when you throw a TechDisc, the simulation assumes that you just threw it straight off the T-pad, which is great in a lot of cases. We've got a sensor on board and some software to actually detect which direction you release the disc. So I can basically say, I'm trying to release straight down the middle. Here is where the middle is, and then we can detect how far left or right were you from the middle. In the testing phase, it's brought out a lot of really interesting discoveries where I thought that right down the middle was like lined up with my body, and that's not what the disc experiences. When I throw a disc, a lot of times it moves, as I'm a right-hand backhand player, the disc actually moves from right to left to get on the line that my body was on, because the disc is over here, right? It's not in line with my body, it's to the right of my body. And so that release direction is something that I hope we can release as a new feature soon. But there's going to be a lot of interesting knock-on effects that come out of that, where, how useful and fun will it be for people to actually use in the simulator is a question. And, how well will it match expectations? Because I think it's really going to challenge how people view their own accuracy, which is fun. It's stuff that I honestly didn't think that we would. It wasn't even on my radar to think about.
Yeah, it's kind of brutal to throw the simulator and you're like, oh, that's what my throw looks like. It's just, this is the reality.
Yeah, it was kind of a similar effect when I took the rangefinder out for the first time. And, I always thought I could throw here because there were holes with T signs that said 300 and, I'd get birdies on them. So I'd say, I throw a 300. But when I took the rangefinder out, no, I throw like 260. And, similar thing with the TechDisc. I think I throw pretty good. But then you see your real backswing in the simulator, and there's a big swoop in the backswing, and the numbers are all over the place. Like, reality isn't quite as good as I thought.
So for somebody that is just starting to use TechDisc, what would you tell them to focus on to improve their game? Is it just nose angle, or what do you think?
So this is a great question, because we always get asked what numbers are good, and there's not a clear right answer to that. Really, you want to be able to control all your metrics, so you can dial up whatever the shot calls for. The biggest impact is speed, but I think that's also one of the most difficult to see increases in. So if you can choose one metric to improve, get your speed up, because the other ones are usually easier to fix. But once you're at your speed plateau, typically nose angle is the next biggest thing. You see a lot of players throw with an air bounce, which is a negative launch angle, but a positive nose. So the disc starts traveling down, but then bounces up. And you'll find that the discs just stall out much sooner. You need to throw much more understable plastic. So getting a positive launch angle with a negative nose angle and being able to call that up when you need it. Biggest thing's holding people back from getting more distance when they want it and being able to throw different shot types. So that was one of my first realizations when I got the TechDisc, was I couldn't get my nose down. And I was running up, trying all kinds of pouring the coffee and different grips, and nothing mattered, because once my body got in motion, my muscle memory took over and I threw nose up. So I had to literally just stand still, start from my chest, and force a nose angle down just to see a negative number there. And then I could slowly build that back up. But it was not intuitive at all. And 15 years of muscle memory is a tough thing to work against.
I pretty much never tried to really improve. I just played courses, and I just started trying to focus on nose angle. And it's crazy. If you actually hit it right, you get so much more distance with the same amount of speed. On the pro scene, since you've seen so many different numbers, what's been like an anomaly where you're like, you should not be able to throw as far as you can based on the stats?
Ooh, that direction. Yeah, I don't know if we've got anyone in that category. Typically, you can look at a speed and kind of figure out what's the max distance potential of this shot. Like if you get all your angles correct, what's the max distance potential? There have definitely been people who have maximized their spin more than we thought was possible. I remember when we first launched, Gannon came by and threw almost 1700 RPMs and did it on command. It was one of the most incredible things I've ever seen. Gavin Rathbun also threw an insanely high spin forehand, if I remember correctly. Forehands typically have about 40% less spin than a backhand, and he was breaking, I think, 1,000 RPMs on a forehand, which is kind of unheard of. But then there's also people who you've never heard of who can go through a TechDisc and put up Gannon-like numbers. And it's a great way to say, hey, I haven't seen you on a lead card on DGN. Why haven't I seen you there? You've got the stats that say you probably could be there if you wanted to.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder, like, how much of being a pro really is just like mental, like, ability.
It's a lot, yeah.
Yeah. because even on my lowly like MA2 tournaments, I can be way worse form than other player, but just perform better for whatever reason. Like they just decide they're risky, I throw conservative. And it's
You
crazy.
just don't 5-putt, right?
Yeah.
Just 2
Don't
putt every
5-putt.
time. Yeah. You'll gain a lot of strokes.
Yeah, I was talking to some of the team members, and they said Cole Rodolin had like 60 miles per hour, but threw way further than everybody else with that 60 because he just had perfected the nose angle so good.
Yeah, we've been doing some segments with Brian Earhart and Nate Perkins on Tournament Central on DGN, which airs like right before some of the rounds. And it's been really interesting. They'll have a pro, visualize a certain hole, visualize a certain tee shot they're going to take, throw the tech disc into the net. And so you can see the stats that they're trying to generate for that given hole. And to see how slow, how fast some of these guys can throw, but then how much they are reducing their power on certain shots is kind of incredible. There were a lot of shots where they're capable of throwing 70, 75 miles an hour, but they're pulling back to 60 or 62 miles an hour, and doing that repeatably. Because I think one of the things that viewers might not see on this segment, we typically only show one throw, but we'll usually have them do multiple throws. And so you can see when someone's hitting 62.1, 62.4, 62.3 over the course of 3 throws, like that's an insane level of consistency.
That reminds me of old school Simon videos where he threw into a net, like I think he said 73, 73, 73, and he got it perfectly every time.
All right, give me a number.
27.
I like 27. Give me a real number.
Okay, 65.
I mean, for real.
Okay, 84. Jesus.
There you go.
Yeah, it was fun at the Northeast Disc Golf Expo this past year. Simon did a little bit of his speed challenges with the tech disc and nailed it right on. It was awesome.
So overall, what's been the hardest challenge you've had to overcome creating this product, going to market, and developing everything?
I think scaling up a hardware product is always challenging, especially one without an established, this is how you put electronics on disk, without an established manufacturing process. So figuring out how to do that repeatedly, not just once, not just 10 times, but hundreds of times over and over and over multiple people. So it's not just me building every disc. That's probably been one of the biggest challenges, especially with the standard that we set where we don't compromise on data at all. We've rejected a lot of pretty good discs. We've rejected a lot of pretty good circuit boards and whatnot, because one little piece was maybe wrong with it. And we really didn't want to let that get out into the wild. So that part has been one of the bigger challenges that I'm glad I think we're mostly through.
And how do you, when the product's all done, how do you validate, okay, this is working right, the sensor's calibrated properly, because you can't really throw the product.
Right, and we can never really throw the product in all the ways that the customers are going to throw them. One of the surprising things we learned during beta testing way back before we launched was how many different ways people throw, how many different backswings people have, whether they should or they shouldn't. Like the variety is astounding. So we'll never be able to test it in all the ways that customers will test it. So we actually bake that in each step of the process. So we calibrate in a really specific way, even before the boards, you make it all the way through the process. And so really just controlling the quality at each step really carefully is the way that we ensure that the customer is going to get a good product.
And do you have any roadmaps to be able to throw thumbers on these simulators?
You can, yeah, since day one, you can throw thumbers. Okay. Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, we'll label your throw as a backhand hyzer, backhand flat, backhand anhyzer, and if you want to keep going around the clock, you can throw a backhand roller, you can throw a thumber, you can, I forget what all the labels are. Yeah, if you keep going around, like we've got every single angle labeled in there. So whatever shots you can come up with, yeah, it'll read them. Yep. Yeah, try your crazy shots. We had Kevin Jones do a grenade at Worlds, which is a tall ask in that short net, but he did it and it was incredible.
Okay, so to finish out the interview, what's been a common misconception people have about TechDisc that you'd like to just clear the air on?
Most common ones is about flight numbers and the simulation. And I think it's just because this product is so new, and flight numbers have been around for long enough that they're pretty standard, and everyone just assumes they're true. So if I could clear the air, flight numbers are a communication or a marketing tool. There's no flight number lab where these discs go in to get measured and they get an official flight number set. Flight numbers are just the manufacturers trying to tell you, here's what we tried to design this disc to do. Here's how you should think about this disc. We've had the challenge of trying to translate those marketing tools into physics that can run on our physics engine. And so we're trying to translate the speed numbers into a real drag coefficient, and trying to translate the glide numbers into a real lift coefficient, and fade and turn into a pitching moment. And this all has to meet physical reality at some point. And so that's been one of the biggest challenges is, someone says, hey, I can't, if I plug in T-Bird's flight numbers, it doesn't fly like my T-Bird. Well, there's so many reasons for that. That's where we spend a lot of our customer service time.
And do you think there's a world where you partner with PDGA to develop a standard of flight numbers?
Yeah, I would definitely love to push us in that direction. I think everyone on our team would love to make flight numbers a little bit more useful, especially for new disc golfers. I think they largely do a decent job for experienced disc golfers who have a set of discs and have experiences with flight numbers from multiple manufacturers. But we can definitely envision a world where we actually do measure discs in terms of drag and lift and pitching moment, and we standardize those and feed those into a database where you can virtually choose a disc from a manufacturer, virtually throw it on your TechDisc, and then when you get that disc from the manufacturer, it flies like that. Because they've measured it in the same way that we're simulating it, and so you've got a chain of things that are based in physics rather than just marketing. That'd be really cool. Yeah. I think we'll get there someday. We saw how many throwing robots come out this year.
Oh yeah, so much.
Yeah. Yeah. There's some incredible stuff that's happening, and I don't think that's going to slow down.
Yeah, it's astounding to see what people can do that are actual professionals at true engineering, not like us disc golfers. It's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, it feels like a slog every month, and every feature that we release feels like it takes forever to release. But if you sit back and think about it, we've really only been out for about a year, and we've already got a pretty good user base of people using it. People are already starting to understand the metrics. We've already got basically a full simulator that you can play. So it feels internally like it took a long time, but I'd love to think about where we're going to be 12 months from now. I think it's going to be really fun.
Coming from a software background, I developed a product for 2 years that I still don't think ever went to market. So you guys doing all this it's crazy.
Happens.
Yeah, so cool. All right, so with that concludes Going Deep. Michael Sizemore.
Thanks, Matt.